Hey everyone! On this video, we'll talk about the different tile modes within MapleStory Worlds. If you've ever wanted to make a game or level that fits outside the traditional platforming environment of MapleStory Worlds, these modes will help expand your options. The first topic I want to talk about is, what is a tile mode, and what different options do you have? At the current moment of this video, MapleStory Worlds supports 3 different modes. MapleTile. This is the standard MapleStory Worlds tile mode. You can select a tile map, create tiles, and move around exactly like in traditional MapleStory. RectTile. This is where we can get more experimental. Now, our view is from above the player, and we can also walk along the y-axis. SideView RectTile. This is also very similar to the traditional MapleTile mode, except it allows you to use custom textures for the tiles, giving you a bit more custom flexibility, but less use from the traditional MapleStory assets. Now that we understand that, let's look at how we enabled the different modes. So here, we can see that we are on a new map. Let's go ahead and right-click on that map, and click Switch to RectTile Map. Now, as a note, this will delete any progress you currently have on the map, so please be careful to not have anything on this before switching over. Our layer tiling works very similarly in all 3 of these modes. As you're hopefully familiar with, layers are how we create depth in MapleStory Worlds. In regular MapleTile, you can use this to place tiles behind the player or in front of the player. For RectTile mode, those will always be behind the player and doesn't impact collision, but otherwise the layering works in a similar way. You can use tiling for adding textures like grass, water, and other environmental items. You can have multiple tiles per layer, but only 1 tile map per layer. Now let's talk about collision. You may want to direct the player in a certain direction and limit where they can go. You can make specific tiles passable or impassable. This lets you create walls, obstacles, or limits by preventing the player from moving through. If an impassable tile is enabled or created where a player is standing, they'll simply be allowed to move through the connected tiles until they walk off. There are also 2 events with this feature: RectTile Collision Begin event and RectTile Collision End event. You can read more about these in the documentation. If you feel like the tile size is just too large or small for your graphics, or need something centered differently, you can modify some properties of the RectTile map component. Grid size. This changes how large each tile is on the grid. Is odd grid position. This repositions the tile map so that the new corner base point is now the center of the original tile. There's also the ability to work with tiles during runtime. Take a look at the following code. This shows a couple of key features you can try and code. You're able to get the current tile that the player is located on, as well as change that tile. Combine this with some key input, and we can change the tiles on the fly. Since our perspective is going to be quite different in this tile mode, so will our physics. Kinematic body component is the driving component of our character physics in this mode. A link to the documentation of this component will be linked in the description, but we'll cover some of the most important values. Speed factor works exactly how you would think. Changes the speed of the player. Jump speed. This is your initial jump velocity. The higher this is, the higher you'll jump. Jump drag. You can think of this as the gravity of the jump. Determines the rate at which your jump will slow down and the rate that you'll fall. Enable tile collision. This can determine whether or not your player hits impassable tiles. When building a RectTile map, you may want the player to be behind a certain tile layer. The player, by default, renders above all layers, but you can manually change this in the avatar renderer component. As well as RectTile mode, there's one more mode you can choose from called SideView RectTile. This allows you to create the same side view games with your tile-based assets. Everything goes back to the classic MapleStory side view logic, but now you can choose to use your own tiles instead of the provided Maple tiles. Layers now function similarly to how they function in MapleTile. Now your player will switch to whatever layer they're standing on. If you aren't familiar with how this works, there's a link in the description to how layers work in MapleTile mode. There is also a unique movement component used for SideView RectTile. You'll notice properties are similar to the other player movement components. If you want to modify the movement for this mode, there's some recommended documentation in the description. That's everything for this video. I hope you've learned more about how to use this new perspective in your project. Thank you for watching.